Hi, good evening. I'm gonna share here my screen and then we start it. So, we're gonna talk about video games history. Since when it started in 1940 up to nowadays 2020. First games were made in a laboratory in a computer. That's the picture in the left. Ping pong game was one of the first ones made, the picture in the right. After that, they started to build the home console video games. You can see the next page here. It's kind of the left picture. This is Atari, one of the first video games you could bring home, install in your television, and play. There was a few video games installed inside your Atari. That was in the 70s and 80s. So after that, it evolved to cartridges. You can see you could bring your video game console and insert a cartridge where you would change then the video game. In the 80s, we also had the big arcade. Was big hit in the 80s. Arcade games. In 85, you see here in the right, that's the first Super Nintendo. The Nintendo they used to call NES, N-E-S, Nintendo Electronic System. Sega was another company with consoles, and they have Mega Drive, also with cartridge. Nintendo was doing like Super Mario video games, and Sega was doing Sonic video games. After the NES and the Sega Mega Drive, it came up Super Nintendo, which is in 91 was released. Super Nintendo there with cartridges, controls. And then in 96, they upgraded from the Super Nintendo, they created the Nintendo 64, which 64, the name, the first consoles, I can go back here, they were 8-bit. Bit, it's a matter how many memory and how powerful was the consoles at the time. So 8-bit video games, then 16-bit video game, Super Nintendo 32 bits video game, and then raise again to 64. 16, 32, and then 64. After that, what is another evolution of video game consoles? Like Sega in the 80s, you had the cartridge, and they upgraded with CDs instead of cartridges. CDs, Sega Saturn was their next console in 1995. So that was the first big change in the 90s from the cartridges, the games, and then it moved to CDs, which CDs has a little bit more memory, graphics could be better, and the storytelling of a video game could be longer. 95, there comes the first Sony PlayStation, also was a CD console. And then in 2000, they released their next generation of consoles was PlayStation 2, which you can see here in the right. So these are the two in 95 and 5 years later in 2000. One was CD, the second was DVD. That was between 95 and 96 was the first transition from CDs to DVDs. We also follow this in our normal evolution, like from VHS tapes. They all moved to DVDs and CDs in the 90s mostly. Year 2001, Microsoft entered the video game industry, which they brought up the Xbox. It was the console video game, the Xbox shape. It's one of my favorites. And on the right, you can see in that era which the consoles were domaining the market. It was PlayStation 2, Xbox. There was a new Super Nintendo, the blue box there, Nintendo GameCube, and the Sega. After they used to have Mega Drive, and then Sega came up with Sega Saturn with the CDs there. They brought up the Dreamcast, which is the white console over there. This is the Dreamcast DVDs, and that's the next Nintendo. After Nintendo 64, it came up with Nintendo GameCube. It's a blue cube. They were going to call it Nintendo Dolphin, and then they changed the name. They decided to call GameCube. In 2007, in 2008, there was another change then, when CDs turned into DVDs. Now, 2008, the DVD games turned into Blu-ray discs, the new technology back in the time. Blu-ray also could have higher definition images, and still have, and sound system, high definition, audio, Dolby surround sound, all this progress in the gaming industry. Blu-ray also makes the games longer. They could hold more space and better graphics. Now we are talking 2000, in that generation of Blu-ray, Sony came up with the PlayStation 3. They had PlayStation 1 was CD, PlayStation 2 was DVDs, and on PlayStation 3, they already came with Blu-ray discs. Nintendo, after the Nintendo GameCube, that blue box they released there, in 2006, they released a new one called Nintendo Wii. Nintendo Wii is PlayStation and Nintendo, they are very strong, and Microsoft with the Xbox, they're still strong nowadays. The controls over these decades, in the 90s and then 2000, they used to have regular joystick to play the games, which you can see here in the left side. And for different games, you got a different controls, which makes better the experience when you're playing. Such as if you're having you're playing a car game, you have a wheel for you to play with, so you can enhance the experience of playing a game. For driving game, there's a dance game. You can actually stand up and start to dancing in the steps, left, right, front, back. So the control is a carpet you put on the floor, you stand above it and keep stepping on the arrows which appears in your screen for you to keep playing the game. So it's a good exercise, like takes you out of the couch. You do not just playing video games and spending the whole time sitting and playing anymore. Also, it's a good experience for you, keep you fit. For the first person shooting games, which is your player holding a gun and go shooting a lot of things. There is also control. It's a gun joystick. You can use that and shoot straight at your TV screen, and you go left, the aim move left, you go right, the aim move right. So it's very dynamic. It's very good, very much fun to play with that. Xbox, after Microsoft came with the Xbox, that X-shaped console, in 2006, they came with the Xbox 360 with 360 bits, 360 bits, more memory, more capacity. And about 10 years later, or almost a decade later, in 2013, they came up with Xbox One, a new version of the Microsoft console video games. That's important to talk about. We always talk about video games, so it's interesting to talk about the consoles. Where do you play the video games? Nintendo, after the last Nintendo there, is still selling, Nintendo Wii. They came with a smaller version, Nintendo Wii U in 2012. PlayStation, they had PlayStation 3 with Blu-ray discs. In 2013, we have got PlayStation 4. And then 2016, there was a small update of this PlayStation 4. It's called PlayStation 4 Pro, which became, besides Blu-ray discs, you can also play online games. Xbox, Microsoft, and Sony PlayStation, there is a huge market for the online games. These are the most selling consoles of this decade. Between 2010 and 2020, you would see a lot. It starts there on the left, Nintendo Wii, in the middle, PlayStation 3, and on the left, there's the Xbox 360. And also the portable consoles, the small type of consoles there. Now in 2017, another upgrades for Nintendo. They came up with Nintendo Switch, which the controls are very motion capture movements, which if you're playing tennis, you can use the control as a tennis racket. You can actually make the movements of a tennis player. So it's like all the controls, the other controls when you're driving a car or you're shooting, the first shooter games, these make it very interactive. Xbox got a small upgrade, and came up with Xbox One X, its new version in 2017. And now, recently, Xbox upgraded one more time. They came up with Xbox Series X. You can see on the left picture, it's a cube, double cube, black. And they came up also with Xbox Series S, with a smaller version, more compact. That was released in 2019. This year, 2020, it was released for us PlayStation 5, which also, besides accepting Blu-ray discs to play games, you can play online. Both of them, Xbox X and PlayStation 5, you can download the games in your console and play. These are the two tops in the market in the recent. Some of them is no longer needed to use the Blu-rays discs. You don't need to buy the game physical DVD or physical Blu-ray. You can actually download it, then you pay online and install in your device, in your home console, and play it. So that's what we have for so far in the evolution of game consoles up to 2020. The current available technologies for the players nowadays who plays the Xbox games and PlayStation games, you do have VR glasses. It's a new way to play video games, virtual reality, which you put your glasses and you go immersive in the totally new world. And also the other gameplay you can see here in the right side, the mocap, it's motion capture movement that also has been adapted to the video game consoles. So the movements you make, the player, your avatar, is going to make the same movements you're making. So a very good exercise. That's another picture of the virtual reality, the glasses, which is trending now. What expected for the future? So we are only the start of augmented reality. One example was, one example was the mobile video game Pokemon. You could walk on the streets and you see the real world, like you're filming, recording, or you're going to take a picture of the real world with your mobile phone. And suddenly you come across of a digital version of a Pokemon. That's augmented reality when mix the real world with the virtual world. And on the right, there also, they are entangling it, the virtual reality with augmented reality. You can see a picture in the right side. There is another example. I presume it's going to happen this decade, between 2020 and 2030. The next 10 years, the video games will improve one more time. The next step is augmented reality, which is you can play in the real world. That's the meaning. And that's where the games are going now. So, talking about myself, I have made my own video game, Ping Pong, the version from the 90s, 40s, that first gigantic computer. What I'm doing, why I'm doing, it is I'm in college and one of my modules is computer language software architecture. And working with Java codes and computer codes, I made my own game. Was the Ping Pong game. It was the first game ever made. It was a very good experience. The next step, one of my modules I'm also studying, I have done my own two-dimensional video game, 2D video game. It's one of my classes, and I totally enjoy doing that. Now I can actually show a little bit of my game here, just the play. So hold on with me for a second. And I show how it looks like. It was such a pleasure to make my own video game after spending a lifetime playing video games. So that was super exciting. So that's me. I'm controlling here a spaceship. I'm shooting against alien creatures, octopus, jellyfish in the space. They all shoot against me. Here, more jellyfish. That's 2D games. You are used to play this sort of game in the 80s and 90s. Of course, the graphics evolve so much nowadays, and it's like a movie. They are trying to replicate the entire movie. Instead of just sit back and watch, you are playing the movie. And the graphics are super realistic nowadays. They even hire real actors to do the voice and to do the motion capture to create the characters in a video game. They hire professional actors. The budget, it's the same budget as a blockbuster Hollywood movie. They made very expensive video games nowadays. And the amount of time they take about 3-4 years to complete an entire video game. So I think that's it for the moment. Thank you very much for watching this. Just let me finish here with my presentation. I was showing a little bit of my game. I was playing my game. And that's it. Thanks for watching. That's my name, Carlos Alexandre dos Santos. You can call me Alex. And if any further questions, you can email me. Please, that is the link below. You just email for any queries. Thank you.